Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 8. A lesson from Quran Al-Hakim by the thinker of the Quran, Allama Ahmad Parwez. Dear brothers, today is the 7th of July 1968, and we are continuing our new series of lessons on the Quran, going through the opening verses of Surah Al-Baqarah. The self-made concept of azab, punishment, contrary to the meaning presented by the Quran. In the previous lesson, we saw the reality that those people who develop the condition of abandoning thought and reflection, when whatever is presented before them, they reject it blindly out of stubbornness, prejudice, envy, malice, or blind imitation, even under the influence of the doctrine of predestination, then for them, the Quran says, the result of this attitude is that gradually their faculties of understanding and thinking become paralyzed. When these faculties are paralyzed, they say, good, now we are spared the effort of reflection. But these are the very people, as I explained in detail, who do possess the capacity to think and understand. Their denial means they deliberately adopt the opposite course. For them it is said, وَلَهُمْ عَذَابٌ azim. For them is a great punishment. This does not mean that since they lack the ability to think, it does not matter. Rather, it means that the result of their chosen attitude is this punishment. The word azab requires careful consideration. Throughout the Quran from beginning to end, the word azab is repeated. In our minds, however, a self-made concept has taken root. That concept is that punishment begins after death, in the grave. Although the belief also exists that accountability will be taken on the day of judgment, people say punishment starts in the grave even before the trial is complete, as if under-trial prisoners are punished before the verdict is given. Then they describe various forms of punishment. Childhood memories of fearful depictions. Nowadays such things are not seen in homes, but in our childhood there used to be those books of visions, O Ziyaratan Wikhan Waliya, which elders of our age will remember. In those books, terrifying figures were drawn, even shown weeping. Of course, those were artificial tears, but the women sitting around would become frightened, distressed, and begin to cry. Their hearts would be softened, and then the presenter would say, to be saved from this punishment, give money. Sutto paise do. This is the kind of concept of punishment that was created. Similarly, the concept of hell was also shaped in this way, as a place of torment, pain, and harshness. The fundamental characteristic of the Arabic language and the Quranic meaning of hell's punishment. Dear brothers, the matter is not as people usually think, and I will say, as I often repeat, that the Arabic language itself is a miracle. From this, it becomes clear that for this book, the final book of the author, and the author is God himself, the language chosen was truly capable of bearing the weight of the realities contained in the Quran. Look at how the entire meaning is encapsulated in a single word, adhab. What does it mean? According to the Quran, the concept of life is progressive. It is movement, energy, growth, advancement, and continuous forward motion. To stop at any point is contrary to life. Thus, in the process of evolution, to stop with the intense feeling that I cannot move forward, that is adhab. It also carries the painful awareness that other individuals and nations are advancing in the race of life while I cannot. To stop, to fail in the test, especially a test where there is no second chance. The intense feeling of being halted is adhab. It means losing the ability to enjoy the sweetness of life and the capacity to move forward. The central aspect of adhab is being stopped. Think of a sensitive child. What does it mean for him to be stopped? In the race of life, to halt at a point with the intense awareness that I will never be able to move forward, this halting is truly adhab. That is why the Quran uses the word jahim for hell. The root jahem means to stop someone at a certain point. We cannot even feel this because we have become so accustomed to stopping that for us, progress itself is considered to lead to hell. In every sermon, every Friday, every prayer, the phrase is repeated, كُلُّ بِدْعَةٍ ضَلَالَةٍ and كُلُّ ضَلَالَةٍ فِي النَّارِ. Every innovation is misguidance, and every misguidance leads to the fire. So when the concept is that even if a new idea arises in the mind, it leads to hell, then how can such a nation understand that stopping is itself adhab? External obstacles versus inner stagnation. If halting occurs because of external obstacles, someone blocks your path, you're forced to stop, this is not adhab, because within you there is still the yearning, the desire, the wish to break through and leap forward. External barriers are not adhab. But if an inner change occurs, and from within you stop at something without external obstacles, then this is what the Quran calls adhab, the Arabs' understanding of adhab. Listen further. How did the Arabs illustrate this concept? In the land of Arabia, with its intense heat and scarcity of water, animals would suffer thirst. After a long period of thirst, a condition would arise in them. Even when fodder was placed before them, they could not eat it. This was the state of extreme thirst. You may have experienced something similar. When thirst is overwhelming, the appetite for food disappears. One stops. This condition, when due to thirst, the animal refrains from benefiting from the means of life placed before it, this was called adhab, the essence of adhab. So what is adhab? It is the state of being stopped from benefiting from the provisions of life, and this state is a result of man's own actions, which create within him such conditions. The essence is to stop, and stopping itself is adhab. A hadith of the Prophet ﷺ about stagnation in human life. Dear brothers, to stop at one point in life is a great punishment. The blessed hadith of the Prophet ﷺ shines like a radiant pearl among a heap of stones, encapsulating the essence of the Quran's teaching. فَمَنِ اسْتَوَى يَوْمَهُ مَغْبُونٌ, whose 2 days are equal, has suffered loss. If today's step does not move ahead of yesterday's, he is ruined. Just 4 words, dear brothers, convey the entire message. If 2 days pass alike, if today does not advance beyond yesterday, destruction has occurred. For nations or individuals, the process of evolution should be such that every rising sun takes them one step forward. The result of our misdeeds opposite to a bright future. In contrast, when a nation's condition becomes such, and worse still when they fabricate traditions and attribute them to the exalted prophet who had spoken for the helplessness of his community, then the concept arises that the further one retreats into the past, the more radiant life becomes, and the more one advances into the future, the darker it grows. But the Prophet ﷺ had said, to stand still at one point, to stop, is itself destruction. How much worse then is the condition when Iske dil se poochiye, iske jigar se poochiye. Aaj jiski manzil-e maqsood, kal se dur ho. Every new day takes a step backward. Dear brothers, can there be any punishment more severe, more intense, more grave than this? Yet we have reserved hell only for others, not for ourselves. The Quran says, وَاللَّهُمْ azabun azim, 2.7. For them is a great punishment. What has become of us, and why has this ummah reached such a state? Because the faculties of understanding and reflection have been lost. We abandoned thinking altogether. Either we did nothing, or when we did act, it was only an emotional outburst. The discipline of thoughtful planning, followed by steadfast perseverance on the chosen path, has disappeared from within us. The dangerous form of punishment. The birth of lawlessness in society. Third form. The Quran has described different forms of adhab, or punishment.
It says, قُلْ هُوَ الْقَادِرُ عَلَىٰ أَنْ يَبْعَثَ عَلَيْكُمْ عَذَابًا مِّن فَوْقِكُمْ. Say, He is able to send upon you punishment from above you. Sometimes punishment takes the form that the upper class engages in such actions that bring hunger and fear into society. These calamities are the result of the misdeeds of the ruling elite. At other times, the lower class becomes fed up, أَوْ مِن تَحْتِ أَرْجُلِكُمْ, or from beneath your feet. The masses lose respect for law, moral corruption spreads, and germs of disorder begin to grow in the atmosphere. In the state of Tung Ahmad Bajung Ahmad, when oppression becomes unbearable, rebellion erupts, society falls into lawlessness, chaos, and anarchy. Sometimes punishment appears in this form, أَوْ يَلْبِسَكُمْ شِيَعًا وَيُذِيقَ بَعْضَكُمْ بَأْسَ بَعْضٍ, or He may divide you into factions and make you taste the violence of one another. This happens when mixed parties are formed. Leaders gather voters from below, create different groups, and then fight against each other. انظر كيف نصرف الآيات لعلهم يفقهون. See how we explain the signs in various ways, so that they may understand. But those who have sealed their hearts, how can they develop the quality of yafqahun, understanding? The Quran repeats, turns, and presents different aspects, but this is only for those who use their faculties of thought.
Beyond political parties, the punishment of religious sectarianism, fourth form. Another example of punishment is given. Later, in 3114, I will explain in detail. But think, dear brothers, how severe this form of punishment is. Do not be like those who became divided and differed after clear proofs came to them. After clear guidance and evidence came, and what guidance could be clearer than the Quran, they created divisions and sects within religion. The result? For them is a great punishment. Our miserable state despite heavenly guidance. Dear brothers, we set up commissions to investigate why our condition has deteriorated. But there is no need. Just 4 verses of the Quran make it clear why this is Azab Azim. Yet our condition is that we have divided the Quran's verses. For example, Ghairil Maghdubi alayhim, those who incurred wrath are Jews. Dallin, those astray are Christians. Then we say, hypocrites in Medina were a group, so these verses are about them. Thus, the entire matter is confined to the past. The Quran itself quotes the deniers. When these truths are presented, they say, Asatirul Awwaleen. These are tales of the ancients. We too have declared the Quran to be Asatirul Awwaleen. Any verse is read and we say, this was about so and so. And some of it is about you too, that passport to paradise is for you. Thus, the Quran has been fragmented, each verse assigned to someone else. But the Quran says, those who create sects in religion, this is explicit shirk. And here it says, for them is a great punishment. This is the same Azab Azim from which we began. For them is a great punishment. Now I must move forward.
The Quran mentions 3 categories of people. Now, dear brothers, brace yourselves. My turn has come. 2 groups have already been mentioned. The first group are those who wish to avoid the dangerous valleys of life and then act upon the practical program. For them it is said, أُولَٰئِكَ عَلَى هُدًى مِّن رَبِّهِمْ وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. 2:5. They are upon guidance from their Lord, and they will prosper. This group is rightly guided, and their crops flourish. The second group is described as إِنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا سَوَاءٌ عَلَيْهِمْ. 2:6. Indeed, those who disbelieve, it is all the same to them. This second group has adopted disbelief. These 2 groups are distinct, with no confusion. One is openly the community of faith and piety. The other openly rejects and opposes it. Both work clearly in their respective ways. The third category. Now comes the third category, dear brothers. About them it is said, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يَقُولُ آمَنَّا بِاللَّهِ وَبِالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ وَمَا هُمْ بِمُؤْمِنِينَ. 2:8. And among mankind are those who say, we believe in Allah and the last day, but they are not believers. They confess, they declare, they say, we believe in Allah and the hereafter. But the Quran says, وَمَا هُمْ بِمُؤْمِنِينَ. 2:8. They are not believers. When this verse came before us, we closed our eyes like pigeons and said, this refers to a group of hypocrites in Medina. But, dear brothers, when الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ appeared earlier, I explained that grammatically this is a verb, those who do. Faith is something that requires action. Similarly, when inna alladhina kafaru appeared, I said this too is a verb, those who act against. Thus, a believer is one who does certain things, and a disbeliever is one who does the opposite. This is the Quran's miracle. It uses verbs to show that faith is about doing. Here, however, it says, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يَقُولُ آمَنَّا 2:8. Among people are those who say, we believe. They do nothing. They only say.
The contradiction. Dear brothers, the question for us, myself included, is, have we done anything that allows us to say, yes, we are believers? According to the verb form, something must be done before one can be called a believer. But one whole category among us is such that they have not even uttered the words of faith. When someone newly enters Islam, you make him recite certain words. At most, we too repeat these words. The Quran says, مَنْ يَقُولُ 2:8, those who say. There is no doubt they say it, but the Quran insists faith was something to be done and they did not do it. Their condition is that they only say it. So listen, وَمَا هُمْ بِمُؤْمِنِينَ 2:8, they are not believers. Why? Because they have not done anything. An example. Logically, this is a contradiction. Faith requires action, but a person does not act. He only says he has acted. Saying is supposed to come after doing. For example, walking is a good thing. It has beneficial effects on health. It prolongs life. But imagine a man lying in bed, cigarette in mouth, newspaper in hand, repeating daily, by God, walking is wonderful, truly beneficial. Will this man become like one who actually walks? Absolutely not. It is simple. Walking is about doing. His repetition is only saying. To be called a believer, man must pass through many difficult valleys. This is مَنْ يَقُولُ آمَنَّا 2:8, the miracle of the Quran, dear brothers. This is not merely about some group of hypocrites to whom our attention should go. This verse 2:8 is very clear. After saying something with the tongue, the condition that is called iman, faith, did not arise. They say with their tongues, يَقُولُ آمَنَّا بِاللَّهِ وَبِالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ وَمَا هُمْ بِمُؤْمِنِينَ 2:8. They say, we believe in Allah and the last day, but they are not believers. The matter is this, every verb has a subject, the one who does. For example, acquiring knowledge is a verb. When someone acquires knowledge, he is called alim, learned one, the doer of knowledge. Similarly, mu'min, believer, is also a subject, the one who has produced the condition of faith. This comes only after doing something. But here they have not done what was required. Grammatically, the noun form could only apply after the action was performed. If they had done it, then the title would apply. But they only say it with their tongues. How then can they be called believers? If one does not acquire knowledge, how can he be called alim? If one is sitting, he cannot be called walker. If one is not writing, he cannot be called writer. The Quran says this was something to be done. Only after doing could one be called the doer. Faith is a verb, but they merely say it. Grammatically, you cannot call them believers. The Quran declares وَمَا هُمْ بِمُؤْمِنِينَ 2:8, they are not believers.
Faith means understanding and conviction through reason and awareness. Dear brothers, let me give some examples. Otherwise, distinguishing between the categories of believer and non-believer would require the whole Quran. In Medina, when the community of believers established their state, their government, their power, wealth, and resources, the surrounding tribes, the Bedouins, were impressed. Whether it was fear of their strength or attraction to join a ruling nation, they too began to say, we have believed. They recited Ashhadu an la ilaha illallahu, the kalima, and became Muslims. After that, they said, we are believers. Think carefully, dear brothers. This is not about 14 centuries ago. It is about today, about us. They began to say this, and we too repeat it from morning to evening, even writing it in registers. The Bedouins said, قَالَتِ الْأَعْرَابُ آمَنَّا. The Bedouins say, we have believed. Here again the verb form is used. They claimed to have done what is called faith. But they were told, قُولُوا أَسْلَمْنَا. Say, we have submitted. Do not say, we have believed. You have not done that. Say instead, we have surrendered. We have joined you. Faith is not achieved by merely saying. It is something to be done. They said, amanna, but it was declared, you are wrong, because وَلَمَّا يَدْخُلِ الْإِيمَانُ فِي قُلُوبِكُمْ. Faith has not yet entered your hearts. Faith is something that settles in the heart through continuous reflection, thought, knowledge, insight, evidence, and reasoning. It is conviction. That had not yet happened for them.
Thus, the Quran itself distinguished between two categories within the same nation, those who had merely joined outwardly and those in whom faith had truly entered the depths of the heart. The sign of a believer is that he sacrifices his wealth and life in the way of God. Dear brothers, the question is, what should one do after declaring faith? The Quran says, وَإِن تُطِيعُوا اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ لَا يَلِتْكُم مِّنْ أَعْمَالِكُمْ شَيْئًا. If you obey Allah and His Messenger, He will not diminish anything from your deeds. This means once you have entered into this program, if you continue to act according to it, then whatever you do will not be reduced in any way. The emphasis is on doing, not merely saying. After verbal declaration, one must demonstrate action. Only then does one become a true believer. The Quran further says, إِنَّمَا مُؤْمِنُونَ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا بِاللَّهِ وَرَسُولَهُ. Indeed, the believers are those who have believed in Allah and His Messenger. This is not just verbal claim, it is action that confirms belief. ثُمَّ لَمْ يَرْتَابُوا. Then they do not doubt. Their hearts are free from anxiety, unrest, or hesitation. Certainty brings them inner peace. وَجَاهَدُوا بِأَمْوَالِهِمْ وَأَنفُسِهِمْ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. And they strive with their wealth and their lives in the way of Allah. They continuously struggle with their resources for the welfare of humanity, the path of Allah. And if the time comes, they even sacrifice their lives. أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الصَّادِقُونَ. These are the truthful ones. What a powerful statement. These are not the ones who merely say with their tongues, we have believed, and then assume the matter is settled. No, true believers are those who act, who struggle, who sacrifice.
For a person to be called Muslim or believer, it is necessary to believe in and act upon the truths of the Quranic code of life. Dear brothers, the first point is this. A person may enter into the community by declaring certain things, but he is not yet a mu'min, true believer. After that, they have bowed to Islam, but now they need to become believers. At another place, the Quran says that a believer is one who bows before God's laws. He must also be a Muslim. This is an important point. For a Muslim, it is necessary to become a believer, and for a believer, it is necessary to be a Muslim. Is faith still required after becoming part of the Muslim community? Faith, iman, is conviction in a formula, in a truth. Action must follow. When one acts upon it and advances, then the word Muslim applies. For a believer, being Muslim is necessary. The Quran says, الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا بِآيَاتِنَا وَكَانُوا مُسْلِمِينَ 43:69. Those who believed in our signs and were Muslims. They had conviction in God's laws, believed in them, and then submitted themselves before them. Here, both aspects are combined. Citizenship analogy. I explained, entering this community is correct. Nationally, there is a collective called Muslims. Just as to become a citizen of a state one must fulfill certain conditions, so too to enter this community one must acknowledge certain truths. Then he becomes a member of the Muslim nation. The question is, once someone becomes part of the Muslim nation, is he still required to bring faith? It may appear unnecessary, but see where the Quran goes. Quranic address to the Muslim nation. The Quran says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, 61:10. O you who believe. This is addressing the Muslim nation. هل أدلكم على تجارة تنجيكم من عذاب أليم 61:10. Shall I guide you to a trade that will save you from painful punishment? Here the word adhab, punishment, appears. Then it says, تؤمنون بالله ورسوله 61:11. Believe in Allah and His Messenger. Notice, they are already addressed as those who believe, yet they are told again, believe. The first Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu is in the sense of nationality, one who has entered the Muslim community. But then they are told, you must also truly believe. The requirement of struggle. What does this mean? The Quran explains, وَتُجَاهِدُونَ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ بِأَمْوَالِكُمْ وَأَنفُسِكُمْ 61:11. And strive in the way of Allah with your wealth and your lives. This is the same point mentioned earlier. After conviction in these truths with full awareness, one must continuously struggle with wealth, and, if necessary, with life itself in the path of Allah. ذَلِكُمْ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ إِن كُنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ 61:11. That is better for you if you only knew.
The nature of religious seminary curricula. You may say, this is a very difficult matter. Yes, dear brothers, it is difficult. For centuries we have stood at one point, while the Quran says something else. That is why the seminaries have set their curriculum in such a way that after 7 years of study, scholars graduate with a certificate. They study 18 sciences in 7 years. Do you know? The Quran itself is not part of their curriculum. Do not be misled. I repeat, the Quran is not in their syllabus. They study 18 sciences, and in the final year, as a formality, they read one commentary, Baidawi on Surah Al-Baqarah, in the same way that people write 786 instead of Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. It is taught only as a token.
When results appear, no such action can help. The Quran says, faith means conviction in truths through knowledge, insight and reasoning. Even after conviction, it warns, when the tangible results of deeds appear, then, La yanfa'u nafsan imanuha lam takun amanat min qablu. 6:158. No soul will benefit from its faith if it had not believed before. When the results appear, if someone then says, I believe, the Quran declares this is rejected. Faith at that moment does not help. Faith requires conviction followed by action. When no time remains for action, when death stands before you, then saying I believe is of no use. Even ordinary people aside, consider Pharaoh. He was a mighty king standing against Moses. In today's terms, his acceptance of faith could have brought an entire nation into Islam. But when he began to drown, with death before his eyes, he declared, I believe in the Lord of Moses and Aaron. If we were there, we might have shouted takbir, but the Quran records the reply, curse upon you. Dar kufr hum pukhtana zannar raru swamakan. You were not firm even in disbelief, do not disgrace the sacred thread of disbelief. You did not remain steadfast even in your kufr. Now seeing death, you utter these words out of fear, curse upon you. The Quran's principle. Dear brothers, the Quran makes it clear, even if one accepts faith sincerely at heart, but does so when no opportunity for action remains, it is of no benefit. If a patient at his last breath believes in the doctor's skill and the medicine's efficacy, it does not help him. Faith must come when time remains for treatment. Thus the Quran says, La yanfa'u nafsan imanoha lam takun amanat min qablu. 6:158. No soul will benefit from its faith if it had not believed before. And further, Aw kasabat fi imaniha khairan. 6:158. Even if faith was accepted earlier, but no good deeds were done with it, then that faith too is of no benefit.
At the time of results, true believers will have neither fear nor grief. You can see where the Quran is leading. In 682, it says, and this is truly a trembling statement. Remember, there are only two groups. One group is those whose hearts are dominated by fear. They are not true believers. The other group is those who will be granted complete peace. Who are they? Alladhina amanu, 682, those who have believed. And what happens when the Quran says, Alladhina amanu? It adds, وَلَمْ يَلْبِسُوا إِيمَانَهُمْ بِظُلْمٍ, 682, and they did not mix their faith with injustice. These are the ones whose faith can truly be called faith. أُولَٰئِكَ لَهُمُ الْأَمْنُ وَهُمْ مُهْتَدُونَ, 682. For them is security, and they are rightly guided. Thus, faith is not merely a claim. It means fulfilling its conditions and living by them. If faith is mixed with injustice, dishonesty, or corruption, then it cannot benefit. The Quran's mirror never deceives. Dear brothers, the Quran's mirror does not deceive anyone. It shows the true features clearly. Whether we accept them or not, it makes no difference to the Quran. These are its verses, its references. You have seen them. Now reflect upon them and consider where we stand. The category of those who only claim faith. The matter began with وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَن يَقُولُ آمَنَّا بِاللَّهِ وَبِالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ وَمَا هُمْ بِمُؤْمِنِينَ. 2:8. And among mankind are those who say, we believe in Allah and the last day, but they are not believers. We saw why they are not believers. This is not the same category as those who, while saying it with their tongues, secretly deny it in their hearts out of greed or fear. That is one type of hypocrisy. This category is different. They only say it verbally, but do not act upon it. After claiming faith, they do not fulfill its requirements. They become complacent. This is self-deception. It can even be genuine and well-intentioned self-deception. The Quran explains their condition. يُخَادِعُونَ اللَّهَ وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. 2:9. They seek to deceive Allah and those who believe. The meaning is, they try to deceive God and the community of true believers. That community which, after fulfilling all the conditions, is truly worthy of being called the congregation of believers. No theory, concept, or belief based solely on human reason can meet the standard of truth. The word yukhadi'un is a very comprehensive term. It comes from the root khada'a. Originally, khada' refers to a path that appears to lead to the destination, but in reality does not. This is a profound point. You may think you are not deceived, that you are proceeding correctly toward the goal. But the Quran asks, have you consulted the signposts? Have you checked whether you are on the right path? Or have you decided on your own? It is possible that the decision was made with sincerity and good intention. Yet many wrong decisions are made with the utmost sincerity, and the result is still destruction.
The opium of self-made religion has weakened the Muslim Ummah for centuries. I often say, our grandmothers, when a child would not sleep at night, never investigated why. Instead, they would give the child a little opium so he would sleep. They gave it out of maternal love, out of compassion, because the child was exhausted from crying and would fall ill if he did not rest. They did not intend to harm the child, but their good intention could not prevent the harmful effect of opium. Similarly, people act with devotion and sincerity. They go to shrines, they practice rituals, but sincerity is not the issue. What matters are objective standards. Truth, al-haq, is only that which stands as solid reality before you. A mental concept, belief, or theory is not truth. With sincerity alone, self-deception, farib nafs, is possible. When there is an objective standard, deception is impossible. A scale with correct weights leaves no room for fraud. A medicine, once taken, produces its result without deception. But in speculation, deception remains possible. Thus, the path that seems to lead to the destination but does not, that is khada. A coin kept in the pocket with full confidence that it is genuine, but which turns out to be counterfeit, that is khada. This is self-deception.
Describes the Quran's individuals, but the Quran says, يُخَادِعُونَ اللَّهِ 2:9. They seek to deceive Allah. And then clarifies, وَمَا يَخْدَعُونَ إِلَّا أَنفُسَهُمْ 2:9. But they deceive none but themselves. The second point is, how do they deceive the community of believers? This is important to understand. What category of people is this? It is those who, through self-made religion and false practices, mislead themselves, and attempt to mislead the genuine community of believers, the community that fulfills all the conditions of faith and is truly worthy of being called mu'mineen. Arabs' hospitality was unparalleled, and they did not believe in the concept of وَمَا يَخْدَعُونَ. Dear brothers, let us turn again to the Arabs, to their language and way of life. The Bedouins lived in the desert. If there were 4 trees and a spring of water, they would pitch 2 tents there. They had a few goats and 2 or 3 camels. That was their entire world. For miles around there was no sign of habitation. Hospitality was in their nature. Even before Islam, Arabs had great stories of hospitality. If a guest left a house without eating or drinking, not only that person but his descendants would be considered disgraced, and the tribe itself would lose honor. This was their condition. Unlike a village near a railway station where one knows when a train will arrive and perhaps a passenger will come, in the desert there were no roads, no trains, no certainty of when a guest might arrive. Hospitality meant that if at the time of a guest's arrival there was nothing in the house, everything was ruined. So what did they do to avoid this? They would never let a goat or camel wander off to pasture. They kept them tied near the tent, especially those that gave good milk. This gave them assurance. Whenever a guest arrived, they could immediately milk the animal and serve fresh milk. But sometimes there was a camel that behaved differently. At one time, if milked, it would give 5 or 7 shares of milk. At another time, when milked, it would hold back and not give a single drop. Imagine, such a camel tied near the tent. Guests arrive and the host confidently goes to milk it, only to find not a drop comes out. What would the host feel? This type of camel, sometimes giving plenty, sometimes withholding everything, was called khada.
Application to human society. The Quran says if such individuals gather in the community of believers, they cannot be trusted. If someone never contributes, you can write them off. But if someone sometimes responds emotionally and gives abundantly, you may rely on them in a crisis, only to find at the critical moment they hold back completely. Such people cannot be relied upon in society. This is what God means when he says, يُخَادِعُونَ اللَّهَ وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا 2:9. They seek to deceive Allah and those who believe. This verse reflects the same condition. Just as the camel sometimes gives milk and sometimes withholds it, these individuals sometimes act generously, but at crucial times fail completely. The greatest quality of the community of believers is that they can be trusted. Dear brothers, the Quran builds a community whose members are not hot-tempered, such that when their emotions are stirred, they act unpredictably, and when their emotions cool down, they abandon everything. That would lead to destruction. The Quran wants a balanced personality. It says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ قَالُوا رَبُّنَا اللَّهُ ثُمَّ اسْتَقَامُوا 41:30. Indeed, those who say, Our Lord is Allah, and then remain steadfast. تَتَنَزَّلُ عَلَيْهِمُ الْمَلَائِكَةُ 41:30. Upon them the angels descend. The members of the community must be such that they can always be relied upon. Whatever the circumstances, they will act consistently. The Quran contrasts this with those who, while living among the believers, become a source of deception. Committing a crime against others is committing a crime against oneself. About those who deceive Allah and create such conditions within the community, the Quran says, وَمَا يَخْدَعُونَ إِلَّا أَنفُسَهُمْ. They deceive none but themselves. Outwardly, they think they have deceived Allah and the community of believers, but the Quran declares, they are wrong. They are deceiving themselves. This is self-deception, farib nafs. According to the Quran, the human self, nafs, has a direct relationship with God. Faith is rooted in one's own self, being true to oneself, not deceiving oneself. To deceive oneself is not to deceive others, but to lose one's own integrity. The Quran says elsewhere, وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ نَسُوا اللَّهَ. Do not be like those who forgot Allah. What does it mean to forget Allah? فَأَنْسَاهُمْ أَنفُسَهُمْ. He made them forget themselves. This is self-forgetfulness. They no longer recognize their own reality. Forgetting oneself is in truth forgetting God. Remembering God is for human development. Dear brothers, remembering God, believing in Him, all this does not add anything to God. The Quran says, فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ غَنِيٌّ عَنِ الْعَالَمِينَ. Indeed, Allah is free of need from all the worlds. The entire program is for the development of man's own self, his personality, his nafs. Thus, the Quran explains, forgetting God means practically forgetting yourself. And when the Quran says that deceiving God is in fact deceiving oneself, it emphasizes that this is a matter of one's own inner reality. The Quran even says in Surah Al-Nisa, مَنْ يَكْسِبْ إِثْمًا فَإِنَّمَا يَكْسِبُهُ عَلَى نَفْسِهِ. Whoever commits sin, he only commits it against himself.
The Qur'ani concept of reward and punishment regarding the human self contains profound realities. Dear brothers, when I later discuss the nafs, self, personality, and human individuality, I will bring forth the relevant Qur'anic verses about what the Qur'an says regarding human personality. But here the Qur'an has already said something remarkable. What does a criminal do? He snatches someone's property, beats someone, kills someone, and feels pleased that he has harmed another. He thinks he has committed a crime against someone else. But the Quran clarifies the philosophy of justice and reward punishment in society with one verse. If this teaching were to settle in hearts, crime would vanish from society. It says, وَمَن يَكْسِبْ إِثْمًا 4:11. Whoever commits a sin, فَإِنَّمَا يَكْسِبُهُ عَلَى نَفْسِهِ 4:11. He only commits it against himself. He thinks he has harmed another, but in reality he has destroyed himself. The word ala nafsihi means against his own self. This is a great verse, and the word ithmam is deeply meaningful. It comes from the root itham, meaning an act that causes the energies of life to decline, producing weakness and depression. Thus one who thinks he has deceived another or harmed another has in fact committed a crime against his own self. Nietzsche's insightful saying about punishment for crimes against one's own self. Dear brothers, if this truth reaches the level of faith that any crime committed against another is in reality a crime against oneself, then who would commit a crime against himself?
no one, crime would cease to exist. In Medina, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq 573 to 634 CE created the office of magistrate. It lasted for 1 year, then had to be abolished because no cases of crime came forward. Why would they? Their faith was that any crime against another was in fact against their own selves. For this, I presented Nietzsche's 1844 to 1900 saying, which I repeat, "The crime you committed against me, I will forgive you. But the crime you committed against yourself, who will forgive that? Forgiveness of that is impossible." This is profound.
The Quran's principle of self-harm. The Quran says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَظْلِمُ النَّاسَ شَيْئًا. Indeed, Allah does not wrong people in the least. وَلَكِنَّ النَّاسَ أَنفُسَهُمْ يَظْلِمُونَ. But people wrong themselves. They think they have harmed others, but in reality they have harmed themselves. The Quran says, قُل, say, إِنَّ الْخَاسِرِينَ الَّذِينَ. Indeed, the losers are those الَّذِينَ خَسِرُوا أَنفُسَهُمْ وَأَهْلِيهِمْ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ, who have lost themselves and their families on the day of resurrection. Truly, that is a manifest loss. Announce to them, the harm they thought they inflicted on others was nothing. The real harm was the open, manifest harm they inflicted upon themselves. At the time of results, it will become clear that the loss was their own.
The human body and the human self are two distinct existences, each with its own value. The Quran says something remarkable, dear brothers. I have repeated this before, and I will repeat it again. There is one thing you call I amness. Then there is another you call mine, my wealth, my house, my property, my children, my body, even my life. All of these belong to a mine, but the I itself is something else. That I is what the Quran calls nafs, the self or personality. The Quran teaches that when you harm others, the damage is to their mind, their possessions, their body, their external things, but the real loss is to your own I, your inner self. External things are relative, they can be regained. But if you damage your I, yourself, it can never be restored. So the Quran asks, who is truly at a loss? Measuring loss to the human self through Quranic values. The Quran says, Furada, you will come to us alone. This means that all the things you call mine, even your body and your life, will remain behind at death. What will come before God is your I, your inner self. Therefore, do not worry about the loss of relative things. Worry about the loss of your I, for that is what will stand before God. The Quran says, وَمَا يَخْدَعُونَ إِلَّا أَنفُسَهُمْ. They deceive none but themselves. They deceive their own I. And then, وَمَا يَشْعُرُونَ. They do not perceive. In our usage, shu'ur, perception, refers to conceptual knowledge, an idea in the mind. But for the Arabs, shu'ur meant knowing something through the senses, through tangible reality. The Quran explains, you are harming your own self, deceiving it. The difficulty is that such harm cannot be sensed through the physical senses. When your money is stolen, when property is lost, you perceive it through your senses. But when your eye suffers loss, it cannot be detected by the senses. For that, you need a value criterion, a scale of values. Measure yourself against that scale to see how much has diminished. Do not try to grasp it merely through mental concepts. Closing. Dear brothers, time is up. We have reached verse 8 of Surah Al-Baqarah, and the discussion is now moving in detail to why this happens, why self-deception occurs, why people deceive others. The Quran says this is a disease. We will take this up next time. رَبَّنَا تَقَبَّلْ مِنَّا إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ. Our Lord, accept from us. Indeed, you are the all-hearing, the all-knowing.